The following presentation covers the features and operation of the latest version of the BatteryNet inspection software. When the software is installed, you need to check the configuration to make sure that the correct server web address is entered in, your name, your username, and your password. This information will be provided to you by your system administrator. Under the configuration tab also is a number format. This is used for manual entry of data if it's not imported using either an Albert or Midtronics test device. For instance, for float voltage, if you wanted to, you could place a 1 in the field. When you're entering data and you select autofill, it'll save the whole number plus the first decimal place if a 1 is entered in there. For specific gravity, you may want to enter 2. And then hit save. Also under the configuration screen is a section for canned notes. Each line can contain up to 250 characters, and there are 5 lines provided. As you can see, standard notes perform the preventative maintenance inspection of the battery. Tests are in accordance with the manufacturer specifications. These are things that you can enter in and then use them on a routine basis so you don't have to type in repetitively if they're the same thing all the time. And under the miscellaneous screen, there's string faults. If you were to set this for 85% and you imported from this device and more than 85% of a certain test value was out of range and fault, it would fault the whole entire string instead of listing each jar individually. You can also refresh your dictionary here. And then the welcome screen opens up with the software. If you don't care to see that, you can just select Site Profile List and it'll go directly there. Hit Save. And this is the Site Profile List. The Site Profile List is where you will download battery inspection profiles from the server. This list will store up to 30 profiles. Also, at the top of the screen, which is visible all the time, is a profile button. Will take you back to this screen. A status button, which, if it's selected, you can look at the status of each profile that you have in your list. This particular profile is incomplete. Nothing has been done with it. There's nothing over in this area. The next profile, what we need is notes. To complete this inspection, our readings have been taken. The next profile, again, nothing has been done, nothing has been done. So this is a quick way of looking, if you have multiple profiles in your status screen, which profiles you were working on and what the status of each one of those profiles are. If, for instance, you needed to just put notes in this particular profile, you could just hit the Edit button and it'll take you to the notes screen in that particular profile and you can enter the notes. We'll do that shortly. To go back to your profile screen, just select the Profile button. Transmitting reports. Once a report is completed, it'll go to a transmit queue, and you would select this button to take you to that queue to see what reports you have waiting to be transmitted. And there's also an option as to whether you want to send it or not, and we'll show that later on. The download button is where you would download profiles. You download profiles by either a site ID number, a master ID number, or a tag ID number. You can enter up to 6 ID numbers. Select download to download those profiles. The web button, in your configuration screen, you have your login ID and password. There's a shortcut to the web just by providing you have an internet connection. Just selecting the web tab will take you to the web. The only time the software is connected to the internet is when you're downloading profiles or uploading completed inspections. to view an inspection or start an inspection, highlight it. You can either go to view the site information or go directly to entering your inspection. If the enter inspection key is not active, then there's information that's required on the site information before you can proceed with the inspection. We'll view the inspection, the site information. We have the customer's address information. There's also a field for a system name. If the customer has specific names for systems, they can be entered in here and they will show on the front page of the report. And there's also 2 address lines if there's building numbers and suite numbers and you wanted to list them on different lines. Access provides an area to put in battery room information, door widths, what the flooring type is, loading docks, trailer access, elevator information, directions to the site, and other information that may be important to someone looking at the profile. It is important to make sure that this is all filled out to the best of your ability. At some point down the road, when the customer may need a new battery, a replacement battery, knowing whether there's a loading dock and trailer access and elevators and everything else helps with the quote to that customer. The battery data tab will show you the battery specifications. You'll note that these fields are all grayed out. Once the battery has been set up for a particular site profile, it cannot be changed unless it's changed through a replacement report. We'll touch on that shortly. Facility data, charger information, you can list up to 30 chargers. And also generators, fire suppression, eye wash station, safety lighting, hydrogen detectors. You can check any of these that are on the site that you either want to keep inventory on or you have responsibility to inspect. And then your contact information, you can list the number of contacts in here. Contacts can either be listed just for general information or they can be selected to receive reports. It does not matter how many contacts receive reports. If you want to look at the contact information, just highlight it and the screen will expand and show you all the information about that contact. One contact always needs to be the primary or attention to. That person will always receive a report, and he is marked the intention to, and then this particular person's name will be on the front page of the report. The contract tab is something for the future. It does not function at this time. Once you've looked over the site information and made any changes that you may need to do, select the Site Inspection tab. The first screen is the general screen. When you first open up a new profile, this checkbox will not be marked and you'll have confirmed manufacturer date. It's very important that when you go to a site, even if it's under regular maintenance, if it's 1 year between inspections, the battery could have been changed during that period of time. Make sure that the manufacturer date matches the date on the battery that you're working on. If it does, select Confirm. If the battery has been changed out or you're going to change out the battery, make sure that you do a replacement inspection type. What this does is takes the service history that's in the system already for that old battery and archives it, and will start a new benchmark for the new battery. So it's very important to have that demarcation point in the history. If it's just a regular PM, the system will default to that field. The contact is the person that you're interfacing with at the time of the inspection, not necessarily the primary contact for the site. You have fields for ticket numbers, and then three other fields for reference numbers, purchase order numbers, or anything of that nature. Also, you can add additional technicians if there's more than the primary technician working on the site. Select the Test Equipment tab to enter any test equipment that you may be using. Calibration dates are particularly helpful if you're doing work at nuclear power plants or military installations. Any customer location that's going to require a calibration date, a listing of all equipment, and model numbers and calibration date used during the inspection, and they want it on the report. Any of this information that's filled out in this field and in this screen will be on the service report. System readings. Any field that has an asterisk next to it is required to be filled in. Other information is optional. System voltages and equalized voltage, plus minus to ground, ripple voltage and currents, room temperature, and also system load. System load can be represented in percentages, current, kVA, or kW. The site tests, the room temperature field here is the same as the room temperature on the system tests. Filling it in either place will populate the field in the other screen. How you want temperature represented, if it exceeds the recommendation, rack conditions, site fault, general site faults, discharge counter, if torques were performed on a battery, also if testing was done on spare batteries, and then down over here are the safety equipment that's in our site information. So fire suppression, you could just say not tested, or it's not present, whatever the case may be, and that'll show up on the report. Each time you make an entry in a screen, all you need to do is advance to the next screen. It'll save that information. There's nothing else to do in these screens as far as saving information. It's always good to watch, depending on where you are in the software or on the web, what screen requires information to be saved. In the Unit Test tab, you have the Import area for importing data files from Midtronics or Albert testers, also for float or open readings, and what string the data file is for. If a profile has more than one string of batteries and you use two separate data files for your inspection for each string, then you can select the first data file for the first string and then select the second string and your second data file for importing, and the program will put the information in the correct place. If you did use a Midtronics or an Albert, all you need to do is select the Browse button, select the type of file it is, CSV, CDO, or C60, select the file, open, and import. The file gets imported into the BatteryNet software. It's that easy. Once the information has been imported, select the inspection data. From this screen, you can see the averages of the readings that you took, low, high, and average. Also, the alarm and warning low limits, and the warning and alarm high limits, and then also the percentage of variance that was used to calculate out the internal resistance of the battery. The percent of variances is based on this percentage value off of this average. If anything falls outside of the low and high, then it'll alarm. If you needed to do manual entries in the software, even if you did not import data from a test device, you could import all your readings manually, and all that you would need to do is select the checkbox and start entering the information. At any point, if you wanted to change the number of decimal places that are retained for that particular reading that you're entering, you can just select the config button, change that value, and then close this screen and then continue on with your data entries. When you're entering data and you're using the prefill, you would want to retain a decimal point that is representative of the majority of your readings. If one or two readings fall out of range, just backspace, change it, advance to the next reading, backspace, and put it back to where it was. Each subsequent reading after that will retain that value. You always need to enter a value. If temperature readings are 1 decimal place and you selected 1 on your temperature readings, you would have to put in a second decimal place before you could advance forward. It's not just going to copy the reading that's in there continuously to the next one. You always have to make an entry. So if there's only 1 decimal place, you would want to have this particular field 0, not to retain any decimal places. To review your inspection, to review all your entries, you can do that several ways. You can select next and keep advancing forward. You'll see here it advances by jar and then by tray. So each time you hit next, it will advance to the next tray and the next jar. And then you can look at readings that may be faulted. The second way is looking at the prior readings screen by clicking on that tab. This screen will show all of the readings for all of the inspections from the time the baseline was taken. So in this particular case, the baseline readings were July of 2010. So you have each subsequent report after that. If you wanted to look at the readings for the report that you're doing right now, you would just select date, and then you'll have all of the readings in clear view, and you can just scroll down and look at all your readings. If you had concern about a particular jar, this is tray 1, jar 1, for each one of these dates. So you can compare the ohmic, the voltage, and any other reading that was taken from year to year to year by jar. So it's a good way to do on-site analysis of any trending problem. So if you had a battery that had a particularly low or high reading, you could compare it easily to all of the other readings were taken for this battery from the time of the baseline, the first set of readings. If during your inspection you find some other fault, if there was connector corrosion on string 1, jar 2, you could just place it in there. If the majority of the jars had connector corrosion, you could just select string and connector corrosion. If you need to deselect a fault, just go in and uncheck the box. The summary screen will give you a summary of all of the faults from the alarms and warning min-maxes. You can see this particular battery had a number of faults from the data that we imported. A lot of high temperatures. And historically, from the prior reading screen, you can see that for quite a while, this battery temperature has been very high, which would cause alarm for, that the battery may have a premature failure. And you would want to alert the customer of that. In your notes, if we wanted to insert our canned notes, we just performed preventative maintenance and we found irregularities, so we insert that note. If we want the notes to be together in a paragraph, you can just delete the space and bring it up and it'll be a single line, or you can separate the notes out. And you can just type in, high temperature, shortens life. Once you're finished entering the notes, you may want to go over to sales support and have someone in your company contact this customer. And you can put notes in here that there's a high temp issue. When you upload your service report, the sales support sheet goes to a designated person within your company or the region. So there's no need for you to make any phone calls just to follow up. But as soon as you upload this inspection report, an email will go out to that person with the site information and any notes that you put in here or any boxes that were checked. And then that sales support person in your company can contact that customer right away. Once we've satisfied everything in the report, we have a number of tabs here, so we don't know whether we entered all the information that's required. Go down and select Status, and we notice that everything is black. Once there's no red indications on the status screen, it'll say Battery Inspection Complete. And at this point, if you wanted to, you could just go over to the transmit screen, and you'll notice that this inspection report is sitting in the queue to be transmitted. If we want to send that at this point, we can. If we do not want to send it right now, you can just deselect that and it'll stay in the queue until such time you're ready to transmit the report. You may be working on a site that has 3 or 4 or more battery strings with profiles that you still have to do inspections on, and you don't want to transmit the reports until everything is done. That's your prerogative here. If you do want to send it, you just check the box, make sure that you have an internet connection, select transmit, it turns green, the report is now in the server. You can go back to your profile and then you can select the next battery report that you want to do an inspection on. That'll end the session for the battery inspection software.